Hello, and welcome to Unspoken History. My name is Keisha. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I want to dig into a couple of things, mostly about compromises and corruptions and lies and secret deals that have been going on in America since the very first president, George Washington. So I don't think there's any president that was free of corruption of some sort, whether it was a sex scandal, money laundering scandal, or some type of corruption in another country, political corruption, lying, cheating, stealing right here in America. I mean, just all of them had something. And if it wasn't them directly, it was their administration, like the people that they hired to be in the offices that they needed to fill. So, like, even the judges, I'm just like, man, it's just disheartening seeing that nothing was righteous. But we carried the banner of Christianity. So I was watching this documentary about a guy from Bolivia. I think it's somewhere over close to Russia, somewhere. But anyway, he was a Christian, and they were receiving their Bibles and their literature and stuff like that from America. So he just thought America was the greatest. I mean, it must be just so many Christians, and it must be so loving over there until he got here. And he was like, he could not believe that he was in America. What happened to the America that I thought was here? The one that was so righteous, the one that gives away Bibles freely because they had to hide. They had to hide to read their Bible and to worship. But nobody had to do that in America. Nobody had to hide. You can worship as you please back then. I mean, you still can now. But I'm saying his idea of America was crushed when he got here. So I came across this compromise of 1877. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. What is that about? So I go and look at it, and I see that that is how they subverted or, hijacked the 14th and 15th Amendment away from everyone. Because this cold promise, I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm saying they all conspired, made a promise to each other to keep a secret and put somebody else in office that shouldn't have been in office because he was going to do a favor. But anyway, so when I was looking at this one, I thought, okay, well, are there any other compromises? And then I found the compromise of 1850. And then I said, well, what about the other presidents prior to the 1800s? Were there any corruption in those presidencies? And lo and behold, you could just find it all over the US, the United States, because the whole idea of colonization is a big criminal conspiracy. It's a criminal organization. You come and steal other people's land. Now, of course, the Catholic man that was sitting on the throne at the time said all Saracens, anybody that don't serve the Most High God or Jesus or whatever, I don't know what they were serving, but the premise was that they were trying to convert people to Christianity. Well, the type of Christianity that they were converting people to was to the worship of Mary and her son, whoever that is. So if they were coming over here saying, well, these aren't Christians because they weren't following Catholicism, they could have been following the Bible, but not Catholicism, then, okay, so then you have a right to take everything they got and subjugate them forever. Really? Okay, so that was corrupt, right? So everybody coming over here and just basically going on people's land, killing them off, and taking their and taking their property. So that was corrupt too. So when you start with corruption, you're gonna end with corruption. You're not gonna end up with a righteous people, right? It started out wrong. You're stealing, you're killing, you're lying, and you're cheating. There's no righteousness in that. So as I'm looking, I looked and I see like a list of all the federal, uh, what was it called? Federal. It is a list of, oh boy, I gotta go all the way back up. Let me just do it over here much faster. Okay, the list of federal political scandals in the United States. So um, then I found that, and then I found, oh my goodness, it's so much. It's just so much stuff. I'm not going to read it all. Just know that the corruption started with George Washington's administration. And now we're at Donald Trump's administration, and there's been corruption in every single one of them. Stealing, 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 stealing. That's why America has so much debt right now, right? We've been just stealing, 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 lying, cheating, and stealing. That's all America, the United States have done. Anyway, that's the real gangsta. We do live in a gangsta paradise. Okay, so let's read this. A little bit of it anyway. The Compromise of 1877 was an informal agreement between Southern Democrats and allies of the Republican Rutherford Hayes to settle the results of the 1876 presidential election and mark the end of the Reconstruction era. Really? It literally just started. Just started. People barely off the plantations. And we're like, we done with that already. Immediately after the presidential election of 1876, it became clear that the outcome of the race hinged largely on disputed returns from Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Now, the 40 acres and the mule video, Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Georgia were the areas where they were that they had confiscated from the Confederates, and they were supposed to distribute that land to the newly freed slaves. Okay, this is the area of the United States that's being fought over. We don't want those Negroes to have no votes. We don't want them to have no power, no nothing. Okay, because these are the true indigenous people. And if they give them back their power, they got to give them back their land. So everybody was conspiring against the Negroes, right? But at the same time, freedom is built on the Negroes' freedom because America, the United States, is a slaveocracy. And if we don't have the 14th and 15th Amendment, slaveocracy can still exist in America because the 14th Amendment says all persons born. Now, why didn't the 13th Amendment include all persons born? How come everybody born in America couldn't be free under the 13th Amendment? It says slavery shall not exist in the United States. So how are they able to still why would they have needed to write the 14th Amendment if the 13th Amendment was there? Hold on a second. So anyway, the 14th Amendment had to be written because apparently the 13th Amendment didn't work. So really, the 14th Amendment is what really got rid of slavery in America. So they wanted to get around that and stop even paying attention to that. So it says that so those areas, and right now those areas are, a lot of it is historic preservation areas, and the Geechee Gullah or the Gullah Geechee are living in that area. Um, so yeah, it was a lot of blacks in that area who could vote. And they were like, okay, well, if you do this, we're gonna do that for you. You do this for us, we're gonna do that for you. Shh. Don't tell nobody. The only three states in the South with Reconstruction era Republican governments still in power. It was only 11 years. Oh my goodness. They done cleared it up already. As a bipartisan congressional commission debated over the outcome early in 1877, allies of the Republican Party candidate Rutherford Hayes met in secret with moderate Southern Democrats in order to negotiate acceptance of Hayes' election. Mm, mm, mm. the Democrats agreed not to block Hayes' victory on the condition that Republicans withdraw all federal troops from the South. No more protection for those Negroes down there in Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Thus, federal troops from the South, thus consolidating Democratic control over the region. As a result of the so called Compromise of 1877 or Compromise of 1876, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina became Democratic once again, effectively bringing an end to the Reconstruction era. So we didn't want a republic, right? The republic is a country of freedom, right? Built on what the people want. That's not a democratic way of governing is a majority rule, right? So you can bring people from all over the world, put them in your category, and then y'all still got the majority, and you rule. So anyway, that's what happened then. They wanted to end Reconstruction and just totally ignore the 14th and 15th Amendment, which they did for the next, well, let's count, 1876 to, well, it was passed, it wasn't 1976, it was 1968, 7 or 68. So that's about, well, it was before that, okay, because ain't nobody paid no attention to those 14th and 15th Amendments from 1865 to 1965. So 100 years and then 90 years after this 1877 thing. So we just went on and made everybody else in America that wasn't a Negro believe that this is just for the Negroes. We're only doing that to them. As long as we all participate, keep this secret, and all play along, we'll all be good. Except they're all still good, and the rest of the people in America are not. Because they were never on your side. So what happened with this election is that they picked some people. They picked their friends, picked their cronies to be on this electoral commission to be the final say on who was going to be president, but they already knew because they already made the deal. Okay. By the 1870s, support was waning for the radical egalitarian policies of Reconstruction. Mm, mm, mm. A series of laws put in place after the Civil War, excuse me, to protect the rights of African Americans, especially in the South. Many Southern whites had resorted to intimidation and violence to keep blacks from voting and restore white supremacy in the region. So let's skip that part because if it was just white supremacy, then there wouldn't have been a whole bunch of prominent, rich black folks. Now, if they were just talking about white supremacy in the South, okay, because probably most of those Confederate blacks moved to the North, because then they'd have to deal with the poor whites that didn't know, right? The ignorant folks, like the ones, all those poor folks, whites, black, whatever color you were. If you were poor, you didn't know that there was a difference between these blacks and these blacks. So instead of dealing with that, I'd much rather move where most of the blacks are and where the white people know that these are elitist blacks and those are poor blacks. They know because they had identification. They had to be able to find a grandfather, like the grandfather clause. That wasn't for white people. White people could vote. Grandfather clause was for black people who were not indentured, who were not lifelong slaves, who were not children of the Negro slaves. They were something else. Maybe they were African. I don't know. But I think they came from Europe by way of Africa or the Middle East that they call it now. But, used to be North Africa. So it says, beginning in, let's see, did I read all that? Many Southern whites had resorted to intimidation and violence, to keep blacks from voting. So that's against the law. That's against the Constitution. But somehow the United States allowed every state to break the constitutional law, the highest law in the land. So how is it making any difference? The thing's been broken from the beginning. The thing's been stripped up, cut up, stamped on. It's probably under a table somewhere. Who knows? But you couldn't have. They couldn't have been using it. And you see now, if you don't have no right to speak what you want to speak in America, there's no more true media. Everybody just regurgitates the same thing on every single station. Same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. And then if you tell the truth, you're going to jail or you're going to be come up missing or something like that. And then all of this stuff that's being forced on kids in school. I mean, you ain't got no rights. And then executive order, executive order, executive order, just taking away everything, taking away your rights. And you don't seem to be able to do anything about it. Because now don't nobody know what the Constitution says. Don't nobody understand what the highest law in the land is. Because it's been trampled on so much. Anyway, beginning in 1873, a series of Supreme Court decisions limited the scope of Reconstruction era laws and federal support for so called Reconstruction amendments. Wow. Let me read that again. Beginning in 1873, our Supreme Court. So, can we trust it? Is there anything left we can trust? Can we trust the judges, the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land? Can we trust them? No. That list of federal political scandals includes Supreme Court justices. Lots of them. So it's all about money. Ain't a D thing funny. In beginning 18th, the Supreme Court decisions limited the scope of Reconstruction era laws and federal support for the so-called Reconstruction Amendment. So what they just did was said, you know what, we don't care what that Constitution says. I'm going to support the excuse me, support for let me see, let me make sure that I'm reading this right. It says a series of Supreme Court decisions limited the scope of Reconstruction era laws. So it basically put some chains on the Reconstruction era laws and federal support, and put chains on federal support for the so-called Reconstruction amendments. So that 14th and 15th Amendment, they said, forget that. That's just for them Negroes. We don't even need it. We can just ignore that. Okay. Which gave African Americans the status of citizenship and the protection of the Constitution, including all important right to vote. The all important right to vote. Mm, mm, mm. And when those people back then said, so what? We don't care about that 14th, 15th Amendment. One thing that Martin Luther King said best is that their freedom is tied up in ours. So America was not a free place. It was a place of slavery. It was written into the highest law. Everybody abide by that. But then when it's removed and something else is put in place, nobody wants to abide by that. So if you don't want the 14th and 15th Amendment, then you can say child slavery's back. Yeah, because that protected the children of Negro women. So let's just go and get rid of that. Let's just go back to what it was before. Then somehow we're still under slavery. Because right now America is full of immigrants. Yeah, they very many of those people that were here before the Civil War, there aren't very many of their descendants left. We have been filled up with people from everywhere. Europe, Asia, you know, Southern America, which we call Mexico and whatnot. Yeah, as long as their skin is white enough and they can check the white box, they've been flooding over. So that 14th to 15th Amendment don't cover you. And so while everyone is over here trying to fight, they might just put you in slavery. You, I had this thought about something. It was called. The thought came into my mind: American Gulag, and I have no idea what a Gulag is. And then I think I found out that it's a prison. Well, we have prisons. but they're not gulags. So whatever that is, however those prisons work, whatever go on in them, we might have them here. So let me look at this. Okay, let me read this a little bit more because it talks about this electoral commission. Okay, so let's see. It says, in addition to accusations of corruption within the administration of Ulysses Grant, and the economic depression had heightened discontent with the Republican Party, which had been in the White House since 1861. As the 1876 presidential election approached, the Democrats chose Governor Samuel B. Tilden of New York as their candidate, while the Republicans nominated Rutherford B. Hayes, governor of Ohio. In his acceptance of the nomination, Hayes wrote that if elected, he would bring the blessings of honest and capable local self government. Wow, don't they all say that? They all say that. I'm going to make sure I deal with government corruption and government oversight and government spending. They all say the same. They all say what you want to hear. And we say, yay, that's our guy. And then they forget all about that speech once they get sworn in. They do what they was intended to do, and that is what they're told to do by whoever their higher up is. All right. In his acceptance of the nomination, Hayes wrote that if elected, he would bring the blessings of honest and capable local self-government to the South in other words, restrict federal enforcement of unpopular restricted era policies, Reconstruction era policies, sorry. On election day that November, the Democrats appeared to come out on top, winning the swing states of Connecticut, Indiana, New York, and New Jersey. By midnight, Tilden had 184 of the 185 electoral votes he needed to win and was leading the popular vote by 250,000. The Republicans refused to accept defeat, however, and accused Democratic supporters of intimidating and bribing African American voters to prevent them from voting in three southern states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. So, there must have been a lot of African Americans in Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. In all of these states, they worried about them three little states. That's something to think about a little deeper, a bit deeper. Because there's something strange about that electoral college. Anyway, so it says, as of 1876, these were the only remaining states in the South with Republican governments. What does that mean? What's that mean? They were the only ones with Republican governments because the Republican governments was built around the Negro freedom. A Republican form of government is built around freedom of these indigenous people. And if they don't have freedom, then no one does. So what happened to them can happen to anybody in America. And think about it. Start looking around at lots of cases of different situations. It's not just happening to Negroes anymore. It's not just Negroes. Okay. Um, it says in South Carolina, the election had been marred by bloodshed on both sides of the party line, as if we didn't fight enough wars prior to the Civil War. We still gonna fight. This is just a bloody country. Just fight, 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 fight over everything. Even over giving somebody else their freedom. Y'all fighting over a whole nother being, person, man, woman, child's freedom. They didn't have no say. Okay, no say. So um so in South Carolina, so I wanted to say too, like there was a call to repeal the 14th Amendment. And one of the reasons was because they were saying that African Americans, Negro Americans vote was being bought by people. Basically, they didn't really care about the vote. They were just being paid to make this vote. And so we just need to repeal the 14th and 15th Amendment. They have been trying that for over 100 years. And with this Donald Trump situation, talking about getting rid of birthright citizenship, which I'm going to leave my personal opinion, which is not constitutional. So, I mean, if you know what the Civil War was about, if you know about all of the 300 slave revolts, that happened prior to the Civil War and the wars with the Indians and the wars with the people in the North and the South, because it was such an imbalance. Having all those slaves meant the South was ruling the country in what it wanted. So the South interest was being upheld because they had so many representatives, because they had so many slaves. So that caused a problem because they could take those slaves anywhere and get free labor, get the cheaper contracts, outbid everybody. Okay, so it says in South Carolina, the election had been marred by bloodshed on both sides of the party line. Supporters of the Democratic gubernatorial candidate Wade Hampton, a former Confederate general, had used violence and intimidation to confront the African American voting majority, the Negro Americans. Um, a clash between black militia and armed whites in Hamburg in July ended in the death of 5 militiamen after their surrender while at Camboy near Charleston. 6 white men were killed when armed blacks opened fire in a political meeting. Mm. With both sides accusing each other of electoral fraud, South Carolina, along with Florida and Louisiana, submitted 2 sets of election returns with different results. Meanwhile, in Oregon, the state's Democratic governor replaced a Republican elector with a Democrat, alleging that the Republican had been ineligible, thus throwing Hayes' victory in that state into question as well. Mm, mm, mm. It says to resolve the dispute, Congress set up an electoral commission in January of 1877, consisting of 5 U.S. representatives, 5 senators, and 5 Supreme Court justices. The commission's members included 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, and one independent, Justice David Davis. When Davis refused to serve, the moderate Republican, Justice Joseph Bailey, was chosen to replace him. Now, I wonder why Justice Davis didn't want nothing to do with it. He was like, no, I don't want to be a part of this mess, this conglomerate of mess. So somebody replaced him. During the commission's deliberation, Hayes's Republican allies met in secret with moderate Southern Democrats in hopes of convincing them not to block the official counting of votes through filibuster and effectively allow Hayes' election. Okay. In February, at the meeting held in Washington's Wormley Hotel, the Democrats agreed to accept a Hayes victory and to respect the civil and political rights, excuse me, and to respect the civil and political rights of Negro Americans on the condition that Republicans withdraw all federal troops from the South, thus consolidating Democratic control in the region. Do you think they believed that they were going to respect the rights of the newly freed slaves, who had just been, freed about 11 years? Mm-mm. I don't think they believed that. Hayes would also agree to name a leading Southerner to his cabinet and to support federal aid for the Texas and Pacific Railroad, a planned transcontinental line via a southern route. On March 2nd, the Congressional Commission voted 8-7 along party lines to allow all disputed electoral votes to Hayes. Wow. Mm, mm, mm. They ain't even count. They ain't even finna open them up and see who the people voted for. They just gave them all to Hayes, giving him 185 votes to Tilden's 184. The Compromise of 1877 ended Reconstruction. Mm, mm, mm. And then they did all their appointing of their wicked friends and whatnot, as we still do today. And then from 1870 onward, Southern legislators passed a series of laws requiring the separation of whites from persons of color, which would have been fine with me. If they don't want to be around me, I don't want to be around them. On public transportation in schools, parks, restaurants, theaters, and other locations. So now these people are paying taxes. These Negroes are paying taxes. But then they don't get no transportation. They don't get no good schools. They don't get no good parks and restaurants they can go in and all that. So their tax dollars was used for what? Everybody else. Over 100 years, tax dollars and no representation and no ability to vote. Where did all that? that money needs to be returned to the Negroes, to their descendants, because no taxation without representation. So that's going to happen to the rest of it. It's probably already is. Yeah, you know what? It is happening because they don't ask us anything in the top. Up there in the presidents in Washington, D.C., they don't ask. They tell you what you want. The American people wants this, and the American people are not going to stand for that, and they haven't asked you a thing. But somehow they know what you want. So they don't represent you. They represent whoever they represent. Okay. So during the known as the Jim Crow laws, after a popular minstrel, whatever, desegregationist status governed life in the South through the middle of the next century, ending only after a hard-won success of the Civil Rights Movement. Now, the only thing that happened during the Civil Rights Movement is that we can ride anywhere on the bus we want. Because in the 1960s, could people go in any restaurant they want anywhere in the country? Absolutely not. Could they go to any school they want? They still can't. Okay. So this electoral commission, um, created by Congress in 1877 to resolve the disputed presidential election of 1876 between Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel J. Tilden. Now, this Hayes is a Republican. I thought he was supposed to be on the side of the blacks, being a Republican. It don't matter which side they on. Still the same, and has been for a long time. Republicans haven't done anything for the Negro community. So anyway, let's move on to this here. Hold on, let me see what this one says. Oh, this page not responding. Hold on. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now they're all spinning. Okay. You're not going to open up for me. So anyway, the list is extensive, extremely extensive. Um, Let me fix this. Hold on. The list of federal political scandals in the United States and the corruption in the United States. I want to read this Compromise of 1850 that was just prior to the Compromise of 1877. So, this was a package of separate bills passed by the United States Congress in September 1850 that temporarily diffused tensions between slave and free states during the years leading up to the American Civil War. Now, so when you read history as if the Negroes was just sitting around with banjos and didn't have a care in the world, and they're never really addressed. Like anything that they're doing is never addressed, is never spoken of, never written about. Between 1830 and 1865, there was nothing but slave revolts. So when they say, "Oh, they were trying to settle or diffuse tensions between slave and free states," that wasn't the only tensions they had to try to settle. They wanted one of these bills was to increase or to make the Fugitive Slave Act a little bit more tighter, so that they can put a stamp on these slave revolts and slave rebellions and these people running away, running to the north. So um, when they said, when I was reading this and they said to settle the tensions or to settle, excuse me, the temporary diffused tensions between the slave and free states during the years leading up to the Civil War, as if slaves were not revolting, because the whole story is they were docile, they were just happy go lucky, and they weren't fighting at all. They didn't even try to fight back. They were just yes master, yes master. So, but that's the total opposite. So it wasn't just that the people in the North were getting tired of being uh, taken advantage of when it came to contracts, because these people got free labor, right? They're ruling in Congress because they can count their labor, their free labor. So there was a lot of issues at the North that the people living in the North, where there was no slavery, had with the people living in the South who were slave owners. And then the Negroes in slavery had a problem too. They were tired. It was time. They were tired and it was time. And so they wrote the Compromise of 1850 to try to hold off on a civil war in America. But how long did that last? What, 15 years? From 1850 to 1865? No, actually, it was less than that. The Civil War started in 1863, I think. Started rustling up probably 1862. So it wasn't. They had about a decade of so-called quiet, but it wasn't, because the slave revolts between 1850 and 1865. Let's see. Uh, let's see. Let's see what we get. All right. I don't be liking reading all these AI things. We're about to wait with you. No, this is Wikipedia anyway. Mm, I want to see a list. Okay, this might be it right here. Let's see how many slave revolts happened between 1865, sorry, 1850 and 1865. Well, let's see. There's 1849. Okay, now we're looking at Negro so-called African slave revolts, right? Because who was in slavery? Africans, right? No. If you look at this list, you'll see Native American tribes on here as a slave revolt: Black Seminole Slave Rebellion, Creek Slave Conspiracy, Cherokee Nation, Slave Revolt in the Cherokee Nation. It wasn't uh, blacks revolting against Cherokees. Okay. So anyway, I got a video I'm gonna show. It's a real short video. It's a video of an indigenous woman. They call her American Indian or Indian woman, giving a Negro child a bath, and they're both the same color. And I thought, how can they tell the difference? I'll show that video. Maybe I'll find it before I'm done here. But there's one in 1860, 1855. So that's one, two, about three, maybe about three. Maybe it was more than that, because they have um, ship mutinies, women's resistance. Like, I didn't look at any of the enslaved women's resistance in the United States, because a lot of that was infanticide. Like, they would just abort their babies and stuff like that, use their own contraceptives. That was considered a slave revolt, to off yourself or off your children. So anyway, I just wanted to say there was some slave revolts in there. I'm sure there was more than that, but I'm not going to try to find them all. I want to get back to this other thing. Let's see. Sorry. Slave rebellions and uprisings. Let's see what this says. American Battlefield Trust. So there's three. So they make these slave rebellions seem like it was just a couple slaves on the plantation. No, they were getting together in groups of 200, 300, meeting in secret places. They had special code words and stuff like that. So they had to make the Fugitive Slave Act a little more strenuous because of the slave rebellions, right? If they were just docile, having a good old time, why we need? They're not trying to run away. They're happy. They love massa. That's what we were told. Let's see. You only taught about the slave rebellion of Nat Turner. Okay. Let me see. They're at the 1700s. Slave rebellion's been happening since the 1500s. Uh, let's see. We had 1811. Let's see how far they gonna go. Okay. They didn't show us any. All the gaps in information. See right here, the number reached to 200 slaves. Only killed two white men, but okay. So anyway, they had many militias. They had constant militias in America to quell, to squash slave rebellions. There were lots of them. So this 1850 compromise, um, sorry. Oh, where's the rest of my stuff, Lord? Okay, whatever. I have to go back down here and get it. All right. Hold on a second. I got to open these back up because I closed it some kind of way. But so the compromise of 1850 was them trying to bring peace and unity by, a compromise and giving this state that, giving this one this, giving this one that. Everybody all right? Can we move on now? Okay, everybody good? Everybody got a piece? Okay, didn't last long. There it is. This one. And so not only that, not only are the slaves rebelling, but also the Indians are too. The ones that are still on reservations. And so those people that decided to join those Native American tribes as other groups and then integrate themselves in, well, then the agreement that you had with these lying, cheating stealers became a lying, cheating, and stealing from you too. So, because they got removed. I mean, they just reestablished the Native American tribes. Native American means you were born in America. That don't give them no special title. It's been stripped, just like ours was stripped. So they went from being American Indian to Native Americans. That means anybody can mosey on over and become a Native American. That's because everybody born in America is Native American. Look it up. So this list of political scandals. Let me go to this one first instead of the corruption in the United States. So they have almost every single president in this Wikipedia search and every corrupt thing that their administration did. It's a lot. It is a lot. You should check it out on your leisure time. On your leisure. Okay. It says this article is organized by presidential terms in order, oldest to recent, and then divided into scandals of the federal executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. Members of both parties are listed under the terms of the president in office at the time the scandal took place, even though they may not be connected. All presidents are connected to they are not oblivious to what their administration is doing. Okay, or maybe they are. Whatever. I don't know. So, uh, George Washington. Okay, well, let's go back up. The government under the Articles of Confederation. Thomas Conway and Horatio Gates created a movement or a conspiracy known as the Conway Cabal, something, to remove George Washington as commander of the Continental Army. Just treachery. Silas Deane was appointed by the Continental Congress to be ambassador to France. He was accused of mismanagement and treason. As he was attempting to clear himself of the charges, he died suddenly. Mm, interesting, because he was getting ready to tell on somebody. Oh my goodness, he just suddenly died. George Washington's administration, the legislative branch had corrupt. What Senator William Blount, they had corruption in the legislative branch. Okay, so this is the beginning. It just says the legislative branch. As we go down, you'll see all the other administrations have it: executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch, all of them. Okay, but this is the very beginning of these united colonies starting with George Washington's administration. Okay. Senator William Blount, Democratic Republican of Tennessee, was expelled from the Senate for conspiring of his own accord to have Great Britain to take over Spanish controlled Louisiana and Florida in order to boost local land prices. Mm, mm, mm. Conspired with the British to take lands in America. Mm, mm, mm. John Adams administration, executive, legislative, corruption, corruption. Thomas Jefferson's executive, judicial, judges. Now that's the part that blows me away. And if we can't trust the judges, we have no one to trust except the Most High. We should be praying or not. It's up to you. That's what I'm gonna do. James Monroe, legislative. Andrew Jackson, executive. So a corrupt bargain for James Monroe. A corrupt bargain was a supposed bargain by John Quincy Adams with Henry Clay in the United States presidential election of 1824, in which John Quincy Adams was elected by the House of Representatives after Andrew Jackson won the most popular and electoral vote, but failed to receive a majority. The matter was decided by the House of Representatives. Mm, mm, mm. Man, oh man. The executive branch for Andrew Jackson, and the legislative branch for Andrew Jackson, John Tyler, Zachary Taylor. I mean, they got every single president here, every single one. And let me tell you now you see how small these are. Like, okay, so this one is a long one. His whole Ulysses Grant, he was corrupt along with his whole executive branch. Okay, Black Friday when financial tried to corner the gold market by getting the list. Wow, that was interesting. I just stopped on that Black Friday right there when financiers Jay Gould and James Fisk tried to corner the gold market by getting Ulysses Grant's brother-in-law, Abel Corbin, to convince Grant to appoint General Daniel Butterfield as assistant to the Secretary of Treasury, where he could then give them insider information. Mm, mm, mm. So, and then look at his legislative branch and the judicial branch. Now, the other one, some of these are small, like William McKinley, but still, it's still corruption. Okay, bribes, corruption, fraudulent activity, blackmailing political opponents, all of this. But let's look at Barack Obama. Let's just take a quick look at Barack Obama's. Okay, what's this? Warren Harding. His was pretty big. Nah, not too big. No, no, no. I'm just looking to see if anybody's list is as long as Barack Obama's. There's a nice. Who is this? Richard. Yeah. So Ulysses Grant had a long one because he was, just as bad. Richard. These are the ones that their corruption was brought to light. If the corruption wasn't brought to light, it's not going to be listed here. It's not going to be listed here. So anyway, it's not going to be listed until it's available to the public on some media outlet. Okay, who is this? Gerald Ford. Okay, Jimmy Carter. He was my favorite. I thought he was a good guy, but I ain't know no better. That was the president when I was, in my young years, between 77 and 81. I was like 11 and 81. Um, Ronald Reagan. He got a nice. Ooh, look at that. Look at Mr. Reagan. You are top D for corrupt administrations. Mm, wow. That's just the executive. What was this red spot up here? Peter Boss. Okay. Yeah. And then it's legislative. Oh my goodness. I don't know. He might have beat Barack. Okay. Now that stopped here. It's George Bush. Hold on a second. What? Stop it. Boy, they didn't get nothing out on George W.H. or H.W. Look at that small little list. Look at that. Got done already. We on Bill Clinton. Wow. Well, it don't get better. Let's see what George W. got. Mm. Just goes on and on and on and on. So what's the president doing? Just eating, drinking tea and eating bonbons? He don't know all this going on? Because a lot of these articles would say the president didn't know anything about it. The president wasn't corrupt. Their administration was. What? Starts at the head. That is long. Who is this again? Clinton? Wow. Mr. Bill, you were playing your. No, this is George Bush. No, is it Bill Clinton? This is George W. Wow. Hold on. Hold on. Yep, there go Bill Clinton up there. He was before the second Bush. And then the second Bush. Ooh. Mm. Just line after. Wow. Just line after line after line. Wow. Just rolled past $18 million. Now we at the legislative. That was just the executive. Now somebody always gonna take the fall once something get uncovered. They got a fall guy. There's always a fall guy. Even if it ain't had nothing to do with it, he gonna be the fall guy. He gonna admit it, say he did it, and spend that whatever in prison, and maybe his family will be taken care of forever. I don't know. Okay, so I thought Barack Obama's was the longest list of corruption, but apparently George W. Bush is in the runnings. Yeah, because his executive branch doesn't stop right there. George W. Bush was four times that. Now the legislative one is the one that's long for Barack Obama, and then judicial also. So no, him and George W. Bush is running neck and neck, and then down to the current one, which we're not gonna look at yet because he ain't done yet. So, and it's already full enough. Wow, people, wow. And so I don't know what we think we got in America, but it's just ain't. It don't seem like we're any better in the government, in the position of our government than any other government that mistreats their people and suppresses them. And and now before you know it, you're all in debt, and we all have quadrillions of dollars of debt. We can't even count that high, and somehow we got that much debt. And Donald Trump talking about sending everybody a check from where? Talking about some from the money he saved from the terrorists. I said, oh my goodness, if we believe this mess, we are dead asleep, like with our thumbs in our mouth, dreaming. It must be so nice. That dream is just wonderful. If this man's gonna send us a check when he just put us in another trillions of dollars of debt, where the check coming from? What? We ain't saving no money on no tariffs. That means you're not getting your products if you don't pay the extra money. But anyway, and I'll say this is corruption in the United States. Corruption in the United States is the act of government officials abusing their political powers for private gain, typically through bribery or other methods in the United States government. Corruption in the United States has been a perennial political issue, continuous. My granddaughter is singing, so if you hear singing, I'm not stopping. She caught me in the middle. Corruption in the United States has been a perennial political issue, peaking in the Jacksonian era and the Gilded Age before declining with the reforms of the Progressive era. Mm, mm, mm. So then, if you have now, if we've had corruption since the 1700s, that's 250 years. That's since the United States have been an independent United States, separate from the European powers. It's been corrupt since the beginning. I mean, just uh, I don't know how we thought. So anyway, if you're going through all of this time and you just seeing corruption and you don't see no oversight, you don't see no one do anything about the corruption, write no law or anything to try to combat it, then we probably have an uproars, against the government. Excuse me. But then you have these, uh, I like to call it controlled opposition. So they write a law or something that say we got to get rid of this corruption. We're trying to put a stamp out corruption in government. spending and whatever. Okay, so then they'll write these laws to try to regulate those things, but then they're all in office and just go behind doors and just make agreements and subvert them, just go around them. Anyway, as of 2025, then they're trying to score the United States on the scale of corruption. They're supposed to be the model country for the rest of the countries, not be on the same scale as the other countries with corruption. Corruption in the United States dates back to the founding of the country. The American Revolution was, in part, a response to a perceived corruption of the British monarchy. Separation of powers was developed to enable accountability. Freedom of association also served this end, allowing citizens to organize independently of government. This was in contrast to some European powers at the time, where all associations and economic activities were implicitly managed by the government. Really? How'd they do that? Like you couldn't have a little small meeting? Anyway, during the first United States Congress, Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, proposed several new economic initiatives that involved taxes, tariffs, debts, and a national bank. Fears that these proposals would lead to corruption grew so great that the Democratic Republican Party was formed to oppose them. Corruption reemerged as a major theme in American politics in 1824. The United States presidential election with Andrew Jackson ran as an anti-corruption candidate. Really? Years ago. And we still talking about anti-corruption? Do you think anybody really trying to solve that? Every single person they go in there, somehow they can't seem to solve the very issue that they keep winning the election on. I'm just saying. I'm just saying our trust should be in the Most High God because that is the only safety that we have. Because everything else is a lie, a trick, a scandal, and corrupt. So, thank you for watching this information about the 250 years of cold promises among themselves that we are not privy to, right? Laws that only they know about, quases, all of it was like when Ronald Reagan used to say all the time, the color of law. I'm thinking, what is that really? What do you mean? You guys have a special set of rules that y'all follow that we don't know about? Just saying. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and come back and watch another video. Have a good day.